My parents gave my brother $450K, me $0. Then they sued me at 21 for a loan I never agreed to. At 21, I got served court papers at my job. The receptionist led me into a side office like someone had passed away. A man in a windbreaker handed me a packet and said, "You've been served." I looked down at the lawsuit expecting a stranger's name. It was my parents. And the amount they claimed I owed was more money than I'd ever had in my account at one time. My name is Maya, I'm 27, and I'm from Ohio. I'm the kind of person who used to believe family problems could be solved with patience, a little humility, and showing up anyway. At 21, I learned that belief has a limit. It was a Tuesday in March gray sky, leftover snow crusted along parking lots. I was working the front desk at a physical therapy clinic while taking night classes. My life was boring in the most honest way. Work, school, bills, repeat. Around 2:10 p.m., our receptionist leaned toward me and said, "Maya, there's someone here asking for you by full name." That alone felt strange. People at the clinic usually asked for appointments, not for me. I walked to the lobby and saw a man holding a thick envelope. He asked, "Are you Maya Ellis?" I said yes, and he handed it over like he'd done it 1,000 times. "You've been served." I remember blinking at him. "Served what?" He didn't explain. He just nodded toward the packet, turned, and walked out. I stood there in the lobby with the envelope pressed against my ribs, trying to keep my face neutral because patients were watching. Mini cliffhanger. You know that feeling when your body realizes something is wrong before your brain catches up? That was me, standing at work with a lawsuit in my hands. In the break room, I opened the packet and scanned for the plaintiff name. I expected a credit card company, a hospital, some mistake from a landlord years ago. Instead, I saw Linda Ellis and Gregory Ellis, my parents. For a second, the words didn't connect to reality. My parents were the people who reminded me to rotate my tires, the people who brought potato salad to cookouts, the people who said, "We're a close family," like it was a mission statement. My hand started shaking so hard I had to set the pages on the table. The complaint claimed I owed them $48,600 for a family loan related to living expenses and educational assistance. It said I had agreed to repay them and then refused. I read it twice, then a third time, because there was one line that made my stomach drop in a colder, slower way. Exhibit A, promissory note. Mini cliffhanger. A promissory note means someone is about to say, "You signed." And I knew deep down I had never signed anything like that. I didn't cry. Not yet. I did something smaller. I opened my phone, created a folder called Receipts, and started saving everything. Screenshots, emails, bank statements, anything. Because my family loved to rewrite history, but history can't argue with timestamps. I stepped outside behind the building where it was quiet and called my mom. She answered with her normal voice. "Hi, honey." I couldn't even match her tone. "Mom, why am I being sued?" There was a pause too, controlled to be confusion. Then she sighed like I'd annoyed her. "Maya, don't do this in public." "I'm not in public. I'm behind my job. Why are you suing me?" She lowered her voice. "You've been disrespectful. We've tried to talk to you." I stared at the gray pavement. "Talk to me about what? I don't owe you $48,000. She said, calm as iced tea, "We supported you for years. Ryan needed help too, and we can't keep carrying you." That sentence was so upside down I almost laughed. Because here's the context nobody in my family liked to say out loud. 3 months earlier, my parents gave my brother Ryan $350,000. Not in secret, not whispered, announced. It happened in the family group chat. My mom typed, "Big news, we're helping Ryan buy into a business opportunity, proud parents moment." My dad posted a photo of Ryan in front of a shiny office sign, shaking hands with some guy in a suit. The whole family reacted with congratulations. My aunt wrote, "He deserves it." My grandma sent heart emojis. And me? I typed, "Congrats." Because any hint of, "Wait, how?" would have turned me into the jealous sister who can't just be happy. Mini cliffhanger. That's the trap in families like mine if you ask for fairness. They call it bitterness. I said into the phone, "Mom, you gave Ryan $350,000. Her voice sharpened. "That's different." "How?" "It's an investment," she snapped. "Ryan is building something." And I said, very quietly, what was I building? Silence. Then she answered with the most familiar weapon in our family, the guilt-soaked moral lesson. "We gave you a place to live. We fed you. We helped you. And you're acting like you're entitled to more." I felt my jaw clench. "I paid rent." "We never asked you to," she said, which was technically true. My dad had just started accepting my money without calling it rent. Like if they didn't label it, it didn't count. Mini cliffhanger. When someone benefits from your money but refuses to name it, they're keeping the story flexible on purpose. I forced myself to speak slowly. Mom, if you believed I owed you money, why didn't you talk to me before filing? She answered without hesitation. Because you don't listen. This is the only way you'll take us seriously. I felt a wave of nausea. The calm in her voice was what scared me. Not anger, not panic. Calm certainty. Like suing me was just a parenting tool. I hung up before my voice broke. Then I called Mark, my boyfriend at the time. He was at his job on a construction site. He answered, wind roaring on his end. Hey, what's up? I said, my parents sued me. He went quiet. What do you mean sued you? I mean, court papers, at work, for $48,000. I heard him stop walking. Maya, come home. We'll look at it together. That evening, we spread the papers on my tiny kitchen table. My apartment was a studio with a view of a brick wall, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture was secondhand. Every bill was paid with my own paycheck. Mark read the complaint and looked up. They attached a promissory note. I swallowed. I didn't sign it. He traced the page with his finger. It says you did. And then we both looked at the signature printed at the bottom. It was my name, in handwriting that looked close enough to be dangerous. Mini cliffhanger. The scariest lies are the ones that look almost true from far away. Mark said, okay, don't panic. First question, when would you have signed this? I shook my head. Never. He nodded once. Then we treat it like what it is. We gather proof. I opened my laptop and started pulling old bank statements, rent payments, tuition invoices, Venmo transfers to my dad, labeled for utilities. And as I scrolled, I realized something else. My parents weren't just suing me for money. They were suing me for a version of the past where I was dependent, irresponsible, and ungrateful, because that version made their favoritism feel justified. And I had a court date in 4 weeks. End of part 1 cliffhanger. Right before bed, my brother Ryan texted me one sentence that made it clear this wasn't only my parents' idea. Stop embarrassing them. Just pay. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my dad. My dad wasn't a talker. If he called 3 times, it meant someone had rehearsed a story and decided it was time to deliver it. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, formal, almost like he was practicing for court. Maya, we're giving you the opportunity to do the right thing. Call your mother. Mini cliffhanger. When your dad stops sounding like your dad and starts sounding like a representative, you know the relationship has shifted. I went to class that day, but I didn't absorb a single lecture. My brain kept replaying the same questions. How did they come up with $48,600? Where did that promissory note come from? Why now, right after giving Ryan $350K? That evening, Mark and I sat at my kitchen table again. I opened a notebook and drew 2 columns. What they're claiming versus what I can prove. Then I called my college bursar's office and requested every tuition statement from the last 3 years. Calm voice, simple request. Next, I logged into my bank and downloaded statements as PDFs. I highlighted every transfer to my parents, every recurring payment, every month I'd contributed while living at home. Because yes, I'd lived at home from 18 to almost 20. I'd done it because I couldn't afford dorm housing and my parents promised it would help me get ahead. But getting ahead in my family came with a price: obedience. The house had rules that were never written down, but always enforced. Be home early, explain where you're going, don't argue, don't talk back. And my brother Ryan? He came and went like a guest star. He could do no wrong. Mini cliffhanger. I didn't realize it then, but being the responsible one often means you're also the easiest one to invoice later. 2 days after I was served, my mom asked to meet to talk like adults. She chose a cafe near her house neutral territory that wasn't neutral at all because it was full of her friends. I arrived early and picked a table near the window. My parents walked in together, dressed like they were meeting a banker. My mom had her purse clutched tight. My dad didn't smile. My mom sat down and said, "We love you." Then she slid a manila folder across the table. "We're not trying to hurt you," she continued. "We're trying to correct your attitude. You've been acting like a victim." I opened the folder and saw printouts, a list of years, a list of expenses, and at the bottom, the promissory note again. I said quietly, "This note isn't real." My dad's eyes narrowed. "Are you accusing your mother of forging?" I kept my voice calm. "I'm saying I didn't sign it." My mom leaned forward. "You were living under our roof. We paid for your insurance, your phone, your food, your school. We were generous." I asked, "Then why was I paying you every month?" My dad's jaw tightened, and my mom smiled small, satisfied like she'd been waiting for that question. "That was to teach you responsibility," she said. "It wasn't rent, it was participation." Mini cliffhanger. The moment someone starts changing definitions mid-conversation, they're not discussing reality, they're negotiating a story. I pulled out my phone and opened my bank app. "I can show you the transfers." My mom held up a hand like a stop sign. "Maya, don't make a scene." I looked around. No one cared about our table. No one was watching. You made it a scene when you served me at work, I said. My dad's face reddened. We had to. You're stubborn. Then my mom delivered the line that made everything click. Ryan is under pressure, she said softly. If you cared about your brother, you'd help this family. I blinked. Help? How? My mom tapped the folder. By paying what you owe so we can stabilize things. There it was. Not punishment, not morals. Cash flow. Mini cliffhanger. I walked into that cafe thinking this was about fairness. I walked out realizing it was about funding something they weren't telling me. I stood up slowly. I'm not paying a debt I didn't agree to. All communication can go through email. My mom's eyes widened. Don't be dramatic. My dad stood too, voice low. If you fight this, you'll ruin your relationship with us. I said, still calm. You already did that when you filed. I left. In my car, my hands shook so badly, I could barely turn the key. Not from fear of court, fear of what this meant. They were willing to burn my name for money. That night, my brother Ryan called. I almost didn't answer, but I did, because a small part of me still hoped he'd say, "This is insane. I'll fix it." Instead, he said, "Maya, why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked. "Making them take you to court," he said, like I had forced their hand. I stared at my ceiling. "Ryan, did you know they were suing me?" He hesitated. "They told me you were refusing to pay back what you owe." "I don't owe them $48,000. He exhaled sharply. "You always make everything complicated." I asked him, "Did they give you $350,000? He didn't answer directly. He said, "It's not like that." I almost laughed. "It's exactly like that. It's a number. Numbers are the most like that thing on earth." Mini cliffhanger. Ryan wasn't denying it. He was defending it. And that told me he'd already chosen his side. The next day, I went to a legal aid office downtown. I brought the complaint and my growing stack of statements. A woman named Miss Patel sat with me in a small room and read the paperwork without reacting. When she finished, she said, "Okay. First, breathe. Second, do not speak to them without documentation." I swallowed. "What do I do about the promissory note?" "I didn't sign it." Miss Patel nodded. "We request the original, and we look at timeline. Also, did you ever sign anything for them? Anything at all?" I thought about it. I signed a house rules paper when I was 18, like chores and curfew. My mom called it a family agreement. Miss Patel's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. That matters. I felt my stomach drop. "Why?" "Because," she said carefully, "sometimes people repurpose signatures." Mini cliffhanger. I walked in thinking my parents were exaggerating. I walked out realizing they might have built their case out of scraps. Miss Patel helped me file an answer to the complaint and request documentation. She also told me something I didn't expect. "Your best defense," she said, "is not emotion, it's consistency. If your bank records show regular payments, if your tuition statements show who paid what, and if the note is questionable, you have a real chance." A real chance. Not a guarantee, not a miracle, but a chance. That night, I opened my receipts folder and created subfolders. Payments to parents. Tuition statements. Group chat, Ryan $350K. Threats, pressure messages. Court documents. Then I did one more thing. I searched my email for the phrase my mom used back when I was 18, family agreement. And when I found it, my throat went dry. Because attached to that old email was a PDF. And on the last page was my signature. I sat at my laptop staring at the screen until my eyes hurt. The email was dated 3 years earlier. Subject line, family agreement, just to keep us organized, from my mom. I opened the PDF. It was exactly what I remembered. Chores, curfew, and a weird little section about contributing to household costs when able. Nothing about a loan. Nothing about repayment with interest. Nothing with a total dollar amount. Just vague language my mom loved. Because vague language can be stretched. Mini cliffhanger. Consent doesn't live in vagueness. Vague documents are where people hide future betrayals. I printed the PDF and put it next to the promissory note from the lawsuit. Same signature, same slant, same loop on the Y. But the promissory note had something the agreement didn't, a bold line that said I agreed to repay $48,600 by a certain date. A date that made no sense because it was after I had already moved out. Mark watched me compare them. "Can you prove they modified it?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we can prove I never received $48,000. We spent the weekend building a timeline like we were making a documentary. When I lived at home, what I paid monthly. Tuition billing cycles. When I moved out. When my parents gave Ryan the $350K. When the lawsuit was filed. And the more we mapped it, the more obvious the pattern became. The lawsuit appeared right after Ryan got the money. Mini cliffhanger. If your family's generosity has a deadline, it's not generosity, it's a strategy. On Monday, Ms. Patel requested the original promissory note through the court process. My parents' lawyer responded with a scanned copy and a statement claiming the original is safely stored. Ms. Patel called me. They're resisting. That's not proof of wrongdoing, but it's interesting. I asked, what happens if they never produce it? Then we focus on what you can prove, she said. Your payments, your tuition, they're inconsistencies. Inconsistencies. That word became my anchor, because my parents were good at emotions. They were bad at math. That week, my mom started what I can only describe as a reputation campaign. Not outright lies, just hints. She posted on Facebook, hardest part of parenting is when adult kids think support is owed forever. No names, but my aunt commented, some kids don't appreciate anything. Then my grandma texted me, call your mother. You're breaking her heart. Mini cliffhanger. When someone sues you and then asks you to protect their feelings, they're trying to win in two arenas at once. I didn't respond publicly. I stayed boring. I stayed factual. I messaged my grandma privately. I love you. There's a legal issue. I can't discuss details. I'm okay. Then I screenshot my mom's post and put it in receipts because it showed motive, control the narrative. 2 days later, Ryan showed up at my apartment, unannounced. Mark opened the door and stood beside me, quiet support, no aggression. Ryan looked tired in a way I'd never seen. His expensive jacket didn't match his expression. He said, can we talk? I crossed my arms. Sure, here, not inside. He swallowed. They didn't want it to go this far. I stared at him. They filed. They served me at work. Ryan rubbed his forehead. It's complicated. I said, it's money. Money isn't complicated. People just don't like saying the truth. He lowered his voice. The business is not going as planned. My stomach tightened. So you need cash. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, they're under pressure. You could make this easier. Mini cliffhanger. There it was again, everyone acting like I was responsible for the consequences of choices I didn't make. I asked him, did you personally benefit from them suing me? His eyes flicked away. It's not like that. I stepped closer, calm but firm. Ryan, if they get $48,600 from me, where does it go? He exhaled, defeated. It goes toward covering a gap, a temporary gap. A gap, like my life was a patch kit for his decisions. I said, so my parents gave you $350K and when it didn't fix everything, they decided I should pay the rest. Ryan's jaw tightened. You always talk like they don't love you. I answered quietly, love doesn't come with surprise court papers. He looked at Mark, then back to me. If you fight them, you'll lose the family. And Mark said, calm as ever. Sounds like she already did. Ryan flinched like he'd been slapped. Then, he said something that was meant to scare me. They're going to ask for your pay stubs. They're going to dig through your life. I nodded. Let them. Mine is clean. Mini cliffhanger. When your only weapon is truth, you stop being afraid of people looking. After Ryan left, my email dinged. A message from my parents' lawyer. Settlement offer. I opened it with Miss Patel on the phone. Offer if I paid $30,000 within 60 days, they'd resolve the matter and not pursue further legal remedies. Miss Patel let out a slow breath. This is pressure. They want you scared enough to pay for peace. I felt my chest tighten. 30,000 was impossible. Then Miss Patel said, Maya, do not reply emotionally. We reply with requests. We ask for proof, bank transfers, canceled checks, any record of a loan. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Okay. That night, my mom texted me directly for the first time in weeks. Mom, we don't want to do this. Stop being stubborn. Think about your father's health. There it was, health guilt. The classic. I screenshot it. Then I typed one sentence and deleted it. Typed again. Deleted. Finally, I replied, please send all communication through your lawyer. Mini cliffhanger. That message wasn't cold, it was survival. 2 days later, we received their proof. Not bank records. Not checks. A single spreadsheet they had typed themselves, listing value of meals, value of housing, value of parenting support, and estimated tuition assistance. Estimated. As if they'd gone back and priced my childhood. Miss Patel looked at it and said, this isn't proof. This is a wish list. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt dread because people don't build wish lists and file lawsuits unless they believe they can win with intimidation. Then Miss Patel got quieter. There's one more thing. What? I asked. They filed in a court that moves fast, she said. Your hearing is in 10 days. 10 days. I stared at the calendar. My finals, my shifts, my life. And in 10 days, I'd be standing in a courtroom while my parents described me like a debtor instead of a daughter. The morning of court was painfully normal. Traffic, coffee, people walking their dogs like nothing important was happening. Mark drove me downtown because my hands were shaking again. Not because I feared the judge, because I feared seeing my parents look at me like an opponent. In the courthouse hallway, I saw them. My mom wore a pearl necklace like she was going to church. My dad stood stiffly beside her. And Ryan was there too, hovering behind them like a shadow. Mini cliffhanger. Seeing my brother behind my parents felt like confirmation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a team plan. My parents' lawyer approached us first. He smiled politely, like we were closing a real estate deal. "Miss Ellis," he said. "Before we go in, we can still settle." Miss Patel responded calmly. "We're ready for the hearing." The lawyer's smile tightened. "Your client is making this harder than it needs to be." Miss Patel didn't blink. "My client is asking for proof." We entered the courtroom. Small, beige, fluorescent lighting that made everything look tired. The judge was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses and the kind of expression that said she'd heard every dramatic story humans could invent, and she liked documents more than tears. When our case was called, my parents' lawyer spoke first. He described me as a young adult who had accepted financial assistance and then refused repayment, causing financial harm. My mom dabbed at her eye like she'd rehearsed it. Then Miss Patel stood. She spoke slowly, clearly. "Your Honor, we dispute the existence of a loan. We dispute the authenticity and completeness of the promissory note presented. And we have records showing ongoing payments by Miss Ellis to her parents during the period in question." The judge looked down at the papers. "Miss Ellis," she said to me, "did you agree to repay a loan of $48,600? I answered calmly, "No, Your Honor." Mini cliffhanger. Saying no in court felt strange, like I was finally allowed to be simple and direct without being punished for it. The judge turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, do you have records of this loan being transferred?" My dad's mouth opened and closed once. Their lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, the assistance was provided in kind housing, meals, tuition support." The judge held up a hand. "I understand. Do you have records of tuition payments, checks, transfers, receipts?" Their lawyer hesitated. "We have estimates." The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Estimates are not receipts." Miss Patel handed the clerk my binder. Inside were bank statements showing monthly transfers to my dad, labeled utilities. Tuition statements showing payments made through my own student account. Email records of the family agreement that contained no loan amount. Screenshots of the group chat announcing Ryan's $350K investment. The judge flipped through them without expression. Then she stopped at the group chat printout. She looked up. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellis, did you provide $350,000 to your son?" My mom's head snapped toward the paper like she'd forgotten it existed. Their lawyer said, "Your Honor, that is unrelated." The judge cut him off, calm but firm. "It may speak to motive and credibility. Answer the question." My dad cleared his throat. "Yes." Mini cliffhanger. That one word "yes" changed the air in the room, because suddenly the question wasn't, "Why won't Maya pay?" It was, "Why are you taking from one child after giving so much to the other?" The judge looked back at the promissory note. "And the defendant contends she didn't sign this." Their lawyer said, "It appears to be her signature." Miss Patel replied, "We are requesting the original for examination." The judge nodded. "Where is the original?" Their lawyer said, "We are unable to produce it today." The judge paused, then leaned forward slightly. "So you are asking this court to enforce a debt based on a document you cannot produce in original form and cannot support with transaction records?" No one spoke. My mom stared at me like I was betraying her. My dad stared at the floor. Then the judge asked me a question I didn't expect. "Miss Ellis," she said, "when you lived at home, did you pay your parents any money?" I said, "Yes, regularly." "And do you have proof?" Miss Patel pointed to the statements. "Yes, Your Honor." Highlighted. The judge nodded once. Mini cliffhanger. In that moment, I realized court isn't about who's louder. It's about who can stay consistent while the other side improvises. The judge turned back to my parents. "What is the basis for the exact number $48,600? My dad's lawyer started to explain the spreadsheet. The judge looked unimpressed. "A spreadsheet you created is not proof of an agreement." Then, she said the words that made my knees go weak. "I am not seeing sufficient evidence of a loan contract enforceable by this court." My mom whispered, "This is unbelievable." The judge continued, "If you wish to pursue this further, you will need to produce original documentation and proof of funds transferred or paid on behalf of the defendant in a way that constitutes a loan. Not parenting. Parenting." My mom flinched at that word like it was an insult. Mini cliffhanger. They wanted court to validate their version of parenting, support that can be converted into debt whenever convenient. The judge wasn't buying it. The judge looked at my parents' lawyer. I am dismissing this claim without prejudice at this time, based on lack of documentation. Without prejudice meant they could try again if they brought real evidence. My stomach tightened. Not finished. But then the judge added, and I strongly encourage the parties to resolve this outside the court system. This is a family matter being forced into civil court without adequate records. She struck the gavel lightly. It was over for today. In the hallway, my mom rushed up to me. You did this to us, she hissed under her breath. I kept my voice low. You sued me. She shook, furious. After everything we've done, you dragged our names through court. Mark stepped closer, not threatening, just present. Miss Patel said calmly, Mrs. Ellis, do not contact Miss Ellis directly. Any further communication should be through counsel. My mom looked at Miss Patel like she was a villain. Then Ryan approached, eyes wide. Maya, are you happy now? I stared at him. Are you funded now? He went pale. Mini cliffhanger. Ryan's face told me the truth. The lawsuit wasn't about teaching me a lesson. It was about covering something failing. That night, I got an email from my dad. Not through the lawyer, direct. Subject, you've made your choice. Body, don't come around asking for anything ever again. I read it twice and felt oddly calm. Because I hadn't asked them for anything. They had tried to take from me. When the certified letter came, I didn't panic the way I would have months earlier. I didn't call my mom. I didn't call Ryan. I forwarded it to Miss Patel and added it to the receipts folder. Because threats are easier to handle when you treat them like paperwork instead of prophecy. Mini cliffhanger. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, manipulators lose their favorite tool, your urgency. Miss Patel called me the next day. They're escalating, she said, but their threat about your school is likely intimidation. Still, do you have anything that could be misunderstood on your financial aid forms? I felt my cheeks heat. No, I worked. I filed honestly. Good, she said. Then we document that too. We pulled my FAFSA records, my tuition ledger, and proof of my income during those years. Miss Patel drafted a response that was polite and firm. Deny the debt again. Request original documentation again. State that any attempt to defame or interfere with education would be documented and addressed appropriately. No insults, no emotion. Just structure. Then, something surprising happened. My parents' lawyer reached out for mediation. They wanted a settlement again, smaller this time. Offer, $12,000 to avoid further legal costs. Miss Patel asked me, do you want peace or do you want truth? I thought about Evan, except I didn't have a child. I thought about something else. My future. Because paying even $12,000 would be like signing a confession. Yes, I owed you. And that confession would follow me forever. I want truth, I said. Mini cliffhanger. Sometimes paying for peace just buys a more expensive version of the same problem later. At mediation, my parents didn't look like parents. They looked like people trying to manage a reputation risk. My mom said, we don't understand why you're doing this. I answered calmly. Because you served me at work. Because you claimed I signed something I didn't. Because you're trying to turn parenting into debt. My dad's face hardened. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us. And I said, softly, then why did I pay you every month? Silence. Their lawyer tried a different angle. Maya, you can avoid this stress. Just contribute something and everyone can move on. I looked at my parents. You mean I pay you so you can tell the family I admitted I was wrong? My mom's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't deny it. Mini cliffhanger. In my family, the money was never the prize. The prize was the story they got to tell after. Miss Patel ended the mediation quickly. We will proceed. This time, when we returned to court, the judge asked for the new evidence. Their lawyer submitted a fresh packet. It included the same spreadsheet, the same promissory note scan, a few printed photos of me at family holidays. Yes, really, as if smiling in photos proved consent to debt. And one new thing, a claim that my monthly transfers were gifts, not rent. Miss Patel stood and said, Your Honor, we again request the original note and proof of funds paid as a loan. Additionally, we have documentation that these gifts were requested monthly and tied to utilities. She handed over screenshots, texts from my dad saying, Don't forget utilities this week. And, send your part by Friday. The judge read them, then looked up. I'm going to be direct, she said. This appears to be a family dispute over expectations being reframed as a debt after the fact. My mom's face went red. So we're not allowed to expect respect? The judge replied, even-toned, Ma'am, respect is not collectible through civil court. Mini cliffhanger. That line hit me like a bell. Respect is not collectible, love is not collectible, and neither is control. The judge dismissed the refiled claim again, this time more sharply. And while she didn't award me some dramatic payout, real life isn't always cinematic, she did something that mattered. She warned my parents that continuing to file without evidence could be considered improper use of the court system. In other words, stop. Outside the courthouse, my mom didn't speak to me. She walked past like I was a stranger. My dad paused, just for a second, and said quietly, "You'll regret this." I answered softly. I already regretted staying quiet. He walked away. Ryan didn't show up that day. Later, I found out why. The business he'd bought into with the $350K had collapsed quietly. No headline, no announcement, just gone. And suddenly the lawsuit made perfect sense. My parents had tried to patch the hole with the one person they believed they could pressure without consequences. Me. Mini cliffhanger. The golden child gets the gift. The scapegoat gets the invoice. The months after were weird, not dramatic, just emotionally quiet. My mom stopped calling. My dad stopped texting. Family gatherings happened without me. And for the first time in my life, I noticed something. When I wasn't in the room, nobody could hand me a bill for their feelings. I finished my program. I got a better job. Mark and I eventually moved in together, not as a "we survived trauma" trophy, just as two people who had learned how to choose peace on purpose. A year later, my grandma invited me over privately. She hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you, even if your mother won't say it." I didn't cry in front of her. I waited until I got to my car, because what I'd wanted from my parents wasn't the money. It was the message, "You matter too." And I had finally accepted they weren't going to give me that message. So I gave it to myself with boundaries. I changed one more thing. I stopped debating reality with people who benefited from confusing it. My parents still tell their version, I'm sure. They probably say I abandoned the family or chose outsiders. But here's the truth I live with now. They gave my brother $350,000. They gave me a lawsuit. And I gave myself a life where love doesn't come with legal threats.